When I returned home after 11 months away, I thought the reunion dinner with my son and my wife would be the happiest moment of my life. But when I saw how thin and quiet my wife had become, I asked, "Did you receive the $10,000 I sent you every month?" She froze and whispered, "Honey, I never received any of it." The entire table fell silent. Then my daughter-in-law slowly placed her wine glass down and smiled. It must just be a misunderstanding. But I knew something had been taken from us. Before we go any further, I am so grateful you are here with me today. Drop a comment and tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Your city, your state, your country? I want to know. Here on Revenge, Dad. Every voice in that comment section matters to me. A quick note, this story contains fictional elements crafted for reflection and storytelling. Any similarity to actual names or places is coincidental, but everything it teaches you is worth keeping. The porch light was on when I pulled into the driveway. Someone had wrapped a string of Christmas lights around the mailbox, and they blinked in slow, lazy pulses against the November dark. After 11 months of motel rooms and rental cars and gas station coffee at 5 in the morning, the sight of my own house should have felt like exhaling after holding your breath underwater for a very long time. It did not feel that way. I sat in the car for a moment with the engine off, staring at the front door. Something was pressing against the inside of my chest. Not excitement, not relief. Something quieter and colder than either of those things. I told myself I was just tired. 11 months on the road will do that to a man. I grabbed the 2 shopping bags from the passenger seat, the ones holding the gifts I had picked up at the airport in Houston, and I walked to the front door. Daniel opened it before I could reach for my keys. Dad. He was grinning wide and easy, wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my first car. He pulled me into a hug and clapped me on the back 3 times the way men do when they want to seem warm without committing to it. "You look exhausted. Come in, come in." 31 hours of travel will do that, I said. The house smelled like roasted chicken and something with cinnamon. The dining room table was set properly, cloth napkins, and the good plates, the ones Evelyn only brought out for Thanksgiving and Easter. I registered all of that in about 2 seconds. What I registered in the first second was Evelyn herself standing near the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. My wife was thinner, not slightly thinner the way people get when they skip lunch a few times. Genuinely thinner, her collarbone more visible above the neckline of her blouse, her cheekbones casting shadows they hadn't cast before. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, and she crossed the room quickly and pressed her face against my shoulder, and I held her and felt the sharp ridge of her shoulder blade under my palm where there used to be more softness. "I missed you so much," she said against my collar. Her voice had a tremor in it that she was working hard to control. "I missed you too, Evie." I kissed the top of her head and held on a few seconds longer than I normally would have. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said. She pulled back and smiled at me with her whole face the way she had always smiled, and if I hadn't been paying such close attention, I might have believed her completely. But 35 years of reading contracts had trained me to notice what people did with their eyes right before they finished a sentence. Evelyn's eyes cut sideways, just a fraction, just a flicker toward Victoria, who was standing near the kitchen island with a glass of white wine, watching us with a pleasant neutral expression. "Fine," Evelyn said, again softer this time. "Let me get dinner on the table." Victoria stepped forward, then arms opened the smile of a woman completely at ease in a house that wasn't hers. "Richard, welcome home. You look like you need about a week of sleep." "I need about 2 weeks," I said, and let her hug me, and smiled at her over her shoulder, and filed away every single thing I had just observed. We sat down to dinner. Daniel opened a bottle of red wine and talked for most of the first 20 minutes about a vendor meeting he had handled in September, about a contract he had renegotiated, about his ideas for expanding the Pacific Northwest distribution network. He was performing, I realized. Not for me. He was performing for someone who was supposed to be impressed, which meant he believed he had something to prove. Victoria refilled Evelyn's water glass without being asked and touched Evelyn's arm twice during the meal, small gestures the kind that looked like affection but functioned like reminders. I ate my chicken and asked Daniel follow-up questions and laughed at the right moments. I had spent 11 months convincing strangers to trust me with their supply chains. Convincing my own son that I was simply a tired old man, happy to be home, required considerably less effort. Toward the end of the meal, I set down my fork and looked at Evelyn. She was pushing a piece of roasted potato around her plate, not eating it. "Honey," I said, and she looked up. "Are you happy with the $10,000 I send you every month?" The potato fell off her fork. The color left her face so quickly it was like watching someone pull a curtain across a window. Her mouth opened slightly. She looked at me the way a person looks at someone who has just said something in a language they don't recognize. "What $10,000, Richard?" she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The table went very still. My heart was slamming against my ribs, but I kept my face exactly where I had put it, calm, slightly confused, like a man who had simply asked an innocent question. Victoria's wine glass came down on the table with a small, controlled click. "I'm sure there's just been some confusion with the account transfers," she said, and her voice was smooth and warm and completely steady. The voice of a woman who had rehearsed for this exact moment without knowing she was rehearsing. "You know how these things can get tangled up on the back end, especially with the automatic routing. I'll sort it out after the holiday weekend, Richard, I promise." I looked at her. She held my gaze without flinching, and I noted that too. "Of course," I said. "I'm sure that's all it is." I picked up my fork. I took a bite of chicken. I asked Daniel about the Pacific Northwest expansion, and he launched back into his answer, and the conversation moved on, and Evelyn stared at her plate with her jaw set hard and her right hand flat against the tablecloth, pressing down as if she needed something solid to hold on to. After dinner, I helped clear the table. Evelyn washed and I dried, the way we had done 10,000 times before, and she talked about the neighbor's new dog and whether the kitchen faucet needed replacing, and she did not once mention $10,000 or bank accounts or the 11 months she had apparently spent without a single cent of the money I had sent home for her. By 10:30, everyone had drifted toward their rooms. The house settled into its nighttime sounds, the refrigerator hum, the palm tree scraping the side of the garage in the November wind. I lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and listened to Evelyn's breathing slow beside me until I was certain she was asleep. Then I got up. I moved down the hallway in bare feet, staying close to the wall where the floorboards didn't creak. The living room was dark except for the blue-gray light of the television that someone had left on mute. I was reaching for the kitchen light when I heard Victoria's voice from the far corner of the room. She was standing near the window, her back half turned, speaking in a low and deliberate tone that she clearly believed no one else in the house could hear. Evelyn was sitting in the armchair by the bookshelf, her knees pressed together, her hands folded in her lap. "I told you not to say anything about the money." Victoria's voice was like a blade wrapped in cotton, quiet, careful, designed to cut without making noise. "Not one word. We had an agreement." I didn't say anything. Evelyn's voice was tight with the effort of keeping it level. "He asked me directly. What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to do what you've been doing for 11 months. Victoria took one step closer. "You were supposed to say everything is fine and let me handle it. That's the arrangement." "Victoria, he sends that money for me to—" "If you say one more word to him," Victoria said, and her voice dropped even lower, so low that I had to stop breathing to hear it clearly. "Whatever happens to Richard will be your fault. Do you understand me? Your fault." Evelyn's hands tightened in her lap until her knuckles went white. Her chin dropped toward her chest. She nodded once, a small, defeated movement. And something about that single nod hit me somewhere beneath the sternum with a force I had not been prepared for. I stood in the dark hallway, and I did not move. I did not step forward. I did not say a word. Because 35 years of building something from nothing had taught me one thing above all else: you do not show your hand until you know every card on the table. I turned and walked back to the bedroom. I lay down beside my wife. I listened to the palm tree scrape against the garage in the November wind. $120,000. That was the number my mind kept returning to. 12 months at $10,000 each. Gone. And the woman sleeping 3 inches away from me had spent those 12 months counting every dollar she had left, too proud and too frightened to pick up the phone and tell me the truth. That number was not the whole story. I had been reading ledgers long enough to know that the number you could see was never the whole story. I stared at the ceiling, and I began to think. I was out of bed at 5 in the morning. Not because I had slept and woken up naturally, but because I had not slept at all. I had lain on my side of the mattress for 4 hours with my eyes open, and my mind running the numbers over and over the way it always had when I was working a case that didn't add up. 12 months, $10,000 each month. $120,000 that had left my account on schedule every single time and had apparently never arrived anywhere near my wife. I dressed quietly in the gray pre-dawn and went downstairs. I made coffee, real coffee, the kind that takes time, not the pod machine Daniel had installed on the counter that I had never trusted. I stood at the kitchen window and watched the palm trees in the backyard go from black shapes against a black sky to dark green shapes against a gray one. I thought about Evelyn's hand pressing flat against the tablecloth last night. I thought about the sharp ridge of her shoulder blade under my palm. I thought about the way she had nodded that single small nod when Victoria told her that whatever happened to me would be her fault. My coffee went cold before I touched it. By 6:30, I could hear movement upstairs. Victoria came down first dressed and alert in the way of someone who had slept perfectly well, which told me everything I needed to know about the quality of her conscience. She poured herself a cup from the pod machine and gave me a bright, easy smile. "You're up early. Jet lag." "Old habits," I said. 35 years of 5 a.m. job sites. She laughed lightly and leaned against the counter. "Daniel and I were thinking we could all have breakfast together. Talk about what the transition might look like now that you're back. Nothing formal, just a conversation." There it was. Not even 24 hours home, and she was already angling toward the transition. I noted the word she had chosen, not handoff, not retirement, but transition. A word that implied momentum already in motion, a process already begun, a conclusion already assumed. I set my mug down and looked at her with the expression I had spent 35 years perfecting, the expression that said, I was a tired, agreeable man who found complicated things a little overwhelming. "You know," I said, rubbing the back of my neck, "I've been thinking the same thing. 11 months on the road at my age, I won't pretend that didn't take something out of me. Maybe it's time to start thinking about stepping back, letting the next generation take the wheel." Victoria's fingers tightened around her coffee mug just slightly. Her chin lifted a quarter inch. If I hadn't been watching for it, I would have missed both of those things entirely. But I was watching, and I didn't miss either of them. "I think that's a really wise perspective, Richard," she said. Her voice was warm and careful, the way warm and careful voices always are when the person using them is trying very hard not to sound too eager. Daniel appeared in the doorway in his robe, hair uncombed, and Victoria turned to him immediately. The look that passed between them lasted less than 2 seconds and carried a full conversation inside it. I drank my cold coffee and said nothing, and remembered every detail of that look for later. Breakfast was scrambled eggs and sourdough toast. I ate slowly and let Daniel talk, and nodded at intervals and watched my wife move around the kitchen. Evelyn was performing too, performing normalcy, performing contentment, performing the role of a woman who had not spent 11 months being quietly dismantled. She poured orange juice and asked Daniel if he wanted more toast and laughed at something he said, and every single one of those gestures cost her something. I could see it in the set of her jaw and the way she exhaled through her nose when she thought no one was looking. When breakfast was done, I told them I needed some air, said my legs were stiff from the travel. Nobody questioned it. I drove east on the 210 with the windows down, letting the cold November air fill the car. When I had put enough distance between myself and the house, I pulled into the parking lot of a Home Depot on Foothill Boulevard and took out my personal cell phone, not the one connected to the company account, the one I had bought at a Walmart in Atlanta 4 months ago, for exactly the kind of call I was about to make. Frank Delgado picked up on the second ring. "Richard?" His voice was low and steady, the voice of a man who had been expecting this call and had decided exactly what he was going to say when it came. "I've been waiting for you to call." The knot in my chest loosened by about half a degree. "How bad is it, Frank?" A beat of silence. Not the silence of a man deciding whether to tell the truth. The silence of a man deciding where to begin. "Bad enough that I started keeping my own records 8 months ago," he said. "Bad enough that Daniel tried to move me out of the CFO seat in June and couldn't because of the clause in my contract. The clause you insisted on, by the way, the one that requires your signature for any changes to senior executive roles." He paused. "I think you knew even when you wrote that clause that someday you might need it." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Outside the Home Depot, a man in a paint-stained jacket was loading lumber into the bed of a pickup truck, unhurried and ordinary, completely unaware that my entire world was reorganizing itself around a single phone call. "Tell me what you've found," I said. Frank exhaled slowly. "Invoices from vendors with no verifiable physical address. shipments logged at 3 to 4 times their actual market value, payment structures that get deliberately broken into amounts just under $10,000 per transaction. That's not an accident, Richard. That's someone who knows exactly how the Bank Secrecy Act works and is specifically trying to stay below the threshold that triggers a mandatory report to the federal government. I close my eyes for a moment. How long has this been going on? That I can document 8 months, that I suspect longer. Another pause. And there's a name that keeps appearing in the outgoing transfer records. Delworth Capital Management, New York routing. I've never heard of them, and I've been in this industry for 20 years. Delworth Capital Management. I repeated it inside my head until it was fixed there, solid and permanent. A name I had never heard in 35 years of building Hayes Industrial Supply from a rented warehouse in East Los Angeles into a company with contracts in 3 states. Richard, Frank said, and something in his voice shifted, became heavier and more deliberate. How much do you know about what's been happening at home with Evelyn? My jaw locked. I'm learning. She's a good woman. His voice cracked slightly at the edges, and Frank Delgado was not a man whose voice cracked easily. She deserved a lot better than what she got these past 11 months. The anger that moved through me then was not the hot, explosive kind. It was cold and it was specific, and it settled into my bones like something that intended to stay there for a very long time. I need to see you in person, I said. Not at the office, somewhere neutral. There's a place in Pasadena, he said without hesitating. Small coffee shop on Lake Avenue, back corner booth. They don't know either of us there. Tomorrow morning, I said, 8 o'clock. I'll be there. A beat. And Richard, whatever you're planning, don't move too fast. They've had 8 months to build walls. You're going to need to see the whole picture before you touch anything. I ended the call and sat in the Home Depot parking lot for a long moment, watching the man with the lumber tied down his load with a length of orange nylon rope, slow and methodical, knot by knot. That was exactly right, I thought. Knot by knot. I started the car and drove back toward the house, toward my wife, toward my son, and the woman who had turned the last 11 months of our lives into something I did not yet have a complete name for. But I was going to find one. I was going to find one, and I was going to make it stick. Or I told Victoria we were going out for coffee. She was in the kitchen with her laptop open and a legal pad covered in handwritten notes beside her, already working at 8 in the morning, which told me she had not wasted a single hour of the 11 months I had been gone. She looked up and smiled and said, "That sounded nice," and I smiled back and helped Evelyn with her jacket, and we walked out the front door into the pale November morning, like two people who had nothing more complicated on their minds than a cup of coffee and a little fresh air. We drove to Arcadia, not because there was anything particular about Arcadia, but because it was far enough from the house that no one we knew was likely to see us, and because there was a small park on Live Oak Avenue with wooden benches under old sycamore trees, where Evelyn and I had walked sometimes on Sunday mornings years ago, before everything got so busy and so large and so complicated. I parked the car and we walked to the bench nearest the duck pond. The ducks were doing what ducks always do, moving around the surface of the water, with an air of tremendous purpose that led nowhere in particular. Evelyn sat down and folded her hands in her lap and looked at the water, and I sat beside her and waited. The waiting was important. I had learned that a long time ago before I learned almost anything else. You cannot pull the truth out of someone the way you pull a splinter out of a finger. You have to create a space where the truth can come out on its own, at its own pace. So I sat beside my wife on a bench in Arcadia, and I looked at the ducks and I waited. She lasted about 45 seconds. "I don't know where to start," she said. Her voice was rough at the edges like fabric that had been folded and unfolded too many times in the same place. "Start wherever it's easiest," I said. She laughed, and it was not a happy laugh. "There isn't an easy place, Rich." "Then start at the beginning." She took a long breath and let it out slowly. Her hands tightened in her lap. Then she began. She told me about the first month. Victoria had sat her down at the kitchen table 2 weeks after I left, and explained in a calm, reasonable voice that the company was in serious financial trouble, that the supply chain crisis was worse than I had let on, that I had been too proud to tell her the full picture, and that every dollar available was being redirected to keep Hayes Industrial alive. There would be no monthly transfers for a while. Victoria said she was sorry. She said she knew it was hard. She said it was temporary. I believed her, Evelyn said, and her jaw tightened. I believed her because I believed you would have told me if things were really that bad, and if you hadn't told me, it must be because you were trying to protect me. That's the way you've always operated, Rich. You carry things alone." Her voice cracked on the last word. She pressed her lips together and kept going. "So I didn't call you. I didn't want to add to your burden. I told myself I could manage." "Evie, let me finish." She said it quietly, but with a firmness that made me close my mouth. "I had some savings, not a lot. You know, I've never been good with money the way you are. I'm a retired school teacher, not a financial analyst. But I had enough, I thought. I started using it for the electric bill and the groceries and the water and the car insurance, and it went faster than I expected, because I had never had to think about all of it at once before. You always handled so much of it without me even knowing." Her voice dropped lower. She was staring at the duck pond with her eyes very bright and her chin very steady, the way she had always held herself together in front of other people. But her right hand found my left hand on the bench between us and gripped it, and I could feel how hard she was holding on. "By April, I had almost nothing left," she said. "And I still didn't call you. I kept thinking it would get better, that Victoria would come to me and say the company had stabilized and the transfers would start again. But she didn't come. And then, one morning, I was standing in the checkout line at Ralph's, and I was actually counting, Rich, counting individual dollars to make sure I had enough for the milk and the bread and the chicken. And I looked up, and there was a woman from my old school, someone I used to teach with, and she waved at me from across the store, and I turned away and stared at the conveyor belt, because I could not let her see what I was doing." Her voice broke on that last sentence. Not a dramatic break, not the kind you see in movies. A small, precise fracture, like a crack running through good china. She pressed the back of her free hand against her mouth for a moment, and her shoulders shook once, and then she steadied herself and kept talking. "I called Maggie," she said. "Maggie Connors, you've met her, my friend from Jefferson Elementary. She taught 3rd grade for 31 years. I told her I was having a temporary cash flow problem, and I needed to borrow $800 to cover the electric bill. I was so ashamed I could barely form the words." Her grip on my hand tightened until I could feel the individual pressure of each of her fingers. Maggie said of course, and she didn't ask a single question, not one. She just said the money would be in my account by morning. And then Maggie said, "Evelyn, honey, are you sure everything is okay?" And I said, "Yes, I'm fine. Everything is fine." She was crying now quietly and without drama, the tears running straight down her face and dropping off her jaw onto the front of her jacket. She didn't wipe them. She just let them fall and kept talking. "I borrowed from her 4 more times, she said. 4 more times, Rich. In 11 months I borrowed money from my best friend 5 times to buy food and pay bills in the house that you built." She turned and looked at me directly then for the first time since we had sat down, and her eyes were red and wet and absolutely clear. "And I never called you, because Victoria said—" She stopped, swallowed, continued. "Victoria sat across from me at that kitchen table one evening in July, and she said, 'Evelyn, if Richard finds out you're struggling, he'll panic and make terrible decisions, and he could lose the company entirely. Do you want to be responsible for that? Do you want to be the reason he loses everything he spent his whole life building?'" That's our wow and Dick. I felt something move through my chest, not anger, not yet something older and larger than anger, something that had no clean name. "I should have called you," Evelyn said. Her voice had gone very quiet. "I know that. I know it now, and I think I knew it then. But I kept thinking about you out there working yourself half to death to save something that we both gave everything for, and I couldn't. I couldn't be the thing that broke your concentration." She exhaled shakily and squeezed my hand. "I didn't call you because I didn't want you to drop everything and come home. I knew you were carrying the whole company, Rich. I didn't want to be your burden on top of everything else. I had been holding myself very still for the last several minutes, the way I had trained myself to do in 35 years of hearing things that made me want to put my fist through a wall. But when she said those words, I didn't want to be your burden. Something behind my sternum gave way in a manner that I was not prepared for and could not entirely control. I put my arm around my wife's shoulders. She turned into me and pressed her face against the side of my neck and cried properly. Then the deep, ragged kind that comes from somewhere you've been keeping sealed shut for a very long time. I held her and kept my jaw locked, and my eyes fixed on the sycamore trees across the pond, their bare branches making complicated patterns against the gray California sky. I did not say it was okay. It was not okay. I did not say everything would be fine. I did not know yet exactly how fine I could make it or how long it would take. What I said was the only thing I knew with absolute certainty at that moment. You are not my burden, I said. You have never been my burden. You are the reason I built anything worth keeping. She cried harder for about 30 seconds. Then she took a long, unsteady breath and sat up straight and wiped her face with the backs of both hands, and she was Evelyn again, composed and precise and slightly embarrassed about the crying the way she always was. There's more, she said. About Victoria, about things she said, things she did. I know, I said. Tell me all of it. She did. And by the time she finished, the ducks had moved to the far end of the pond, and the November sun had climbed halfway up the sycamores, and I had a complete and detailed picture of exactly the kind of 11 months my wife had survived. That afternoon, I drove Evelyn to Maggie Connor's house in Pasadena. I told Daniel and Victoria that Evelyn and I needed a few days alone together, just the two of us, some time to reconnect after 11 months apart. Victoria said that sounded absolutely lovely. She said it with a smile that reached her eyes completely, the way a smile does when the person wearing it is genuinely relieved. I noted that too. I drove home alone in the early dark, and by the time I turned into the driveway, the shape of what I had to do was already forming itself in my mind, not fully drawn, yet not detailed, but present the way. The frame of a building is present before the walls go up. I had built things before from nothing. I knew how to start. The coffee shop on Lake Avenue was the kind of place that had been there long enough to stop trying to impress anyone. No exposed brick, no Edison bulbs, no chalkboard menu written in 3 colors of chalk. Just a long wooden counter, 6 tables with mismatched chairs, and a woman behind the register who had been making drip coffee the same way since 1987 and had no intention of changing her method for anyone. The smell of the place hit me when I pushed the door open. Old wood and fresh grounds, and something sweet from the bakery case. And for a moment, I felt something loosen in my chest that had been wound tight since the night I came home. Frank Delgado was already in the back corner booth. 30 years of California sun had weathered him. In the way that suits certain men, the lines in his face were deep and permanent, carved by decades of real work rather than worry. And they gave him a solidity that younger men spent their whole careers trying to project. He was 60 pounds heavier than when I had first hired him 20 years ago, with the kind of barrel chest that made his button-down shirts work hard for their living. He stood up when he saw me, and I shook his hand, and the grip was the same grip it had always been, the grip of a man who meant what he said and said what he meant, and had never in his professional life confused one for the other. "You look like hell," he said. "You look exactly the same," I said. He almost smiled. "Sit down, Richard." We sat. The woman from behind the register brought 2 coffees without being asked. Frank had clearly been here before. I wrapped both hands around the mug and let the warmth work its way into my palms and looked at the man across the table from me. "Tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning. Don't summarize. Don't protect me from anything. I need the full picture." Frank nodded once and reached down beside his seat and lifted a canvas bag onto the table. From it, he pulled a manila folder, thick with papers, the edges already worn soft from handling. He laid it flat between us and opened it with the careful deliberateness of a man who had been waiting a long time to do exactly this. "It started in February," he said, 3 months after you left. New vendors started appearing in the procurement system companies I had never heard of, which by itself isn't unusual. You were building new supply chains. We expected new names. But these vendors had no verifiable physical addresses. I ran standard checks through the state business registry and came up with nothing. P.O. boxes in Nevada, a suite number in Delaware that turned out to be a mail forwarding service. He tapped the top page of the folder. Any one of those things alone might be a paperwork problem. All 3 together means someone is working very hard to make sure you can't find them in the real world. Daniel approved these vendors. Daniel and Victoria together. Victoria handled the financial authorizations. Daniel signed off on the procurement side. Frank's jaw tightened. I flagged it to Daniel in April. He told me I was being overly cautious, that the new supply chain structure was more complex than what I was used to, and I needed to trust the process. He said the last 3 words the way you say something that tastes bad. 2 weeks later, he started the paperwork to move me to a senior advisory role, which he couldn't complete, I said, because of the clause in my contract requiring your signature for any changes to senior executive positions. Frank looked at me steadily. I've thought about that clause a lot these past 8 months, Richard. Did you put it there because you anticipated something like this? I picked up my coffee. I put it there because I've spent 35 years watching what happens to good people when the person holding the checkbook decides they've become inconvenient. I drank. Go on? Frank turned to the next page in the folder. The invoicing is where it gets serious. These new vendors are billing us at prices that don't match anything in the current market. Steel fittings at 340% of the going rate. Pipe insulation at 280%. On paper, it looks like premium sourcing. You'd need to know the actual market numbers to catch it, and Daniel made sure the people with access to those comparison figures were not in the loop. He paused. I know those numbers because I've been in this industry for 20 years, and I price check everything I can't explain. Habit, you train me that way. The payments, I said. Tell me about the payment structure. Frank turned another page. This is the part that tells me someone with real financial knowledge designed this. Every single outgoing payment to these vendors is structured to come in under $10,000 per transaction. $9,800, $9,600. Never $10,000, never over. He looked up at me. Do you know about the Bank Secrecy Act? Tell me as if I don't. Federal law requires banks to file a currency transaction report for any cash transaction over $10,000, Frank said. But there's a related regulation that covers electronic transfers if a financial institution detects a pattern of transactions that appear deliberately structured to avoid that reporting threshold. They're required to file a suspicious activity report, a SAR, with the federal government. The operative word is pattern. Individual transactions under $10,000 aren't automatically flagged, but a consistent pattern of payments landing just below that number from the same accounts to the same recipients is a red flag that any competent compliance officer would catch. He tapped the page. The payments to these vendors have been running for 8 months. The pattern is unmistakable. Whoever set this up knows exactly how banking compliance works and is betting that nobody inside Hayes Industrial is looking closely enough to connect the dots. Someone is, I said. Someone has been, he said. Me, and I think Marcus Webb has been too. Marcus Webb! I turned the name over. Marcus had been with the company for 12 years, quiet and precise, and absolutely reliable in the way that certain people are so consistently reliable that you stop thinking about them as individuals and start thinking of them as fixtures. What makes you think Marcus knows something? Because he asked me a question in September that he had no business asking unless he had already figured out the answer, Frank said. He came to me after hours, waited until everyone else had left, and asked me very carefully, very quietly, whether I had noticed any duplicate invoice serial numbers in the procurement records. Frank held my gaze. Duplicate serial numbers don't happen in a legitimate system, Richard. Every invoice has a unique number. If Marcus was asking about duplicates, he had already found some. I set my coffee down. The woman behind the counter was refilling the sugar dispensers, working her way methodically down the row of tables, paying no attention to us whatsoever. Why didn't he come to you directly? I asked. Because somebody got to him first, Frank said. His voice dropped lower, taking on the particular weight of someone delivering news they have been holding for a long time. I don't know the details, but I know that 2 weeks after Marcus asked me that question, he stopped asking questions entirely. Stopped talking about anything that wasn't strictly his assigned work, started keeping his office door closed, which he had never done in 12 years. He folded his hands on the table. A man who suddenly goes quiet in the middle of asking important questions has either found what he was looking for and gotten scared, or someone has given him a very specific reason to stop. I was quiet for a moment, not the absence of thought, but the presence of too much of it, everything organizing and reorganizing in rapid sequence. The invoices, the vendor addresses, the payment structure under $10,000. Marcus Webb going quiet in September. And underneath all of it, like a foundation crack running through everything Delworth Capital Management. The outgoing transfers, I said. The ones you mentioned on the phone, Delworth Capital. Walk me through exactly what you've been able to trace. Frank turned to the last section of the folder and spread 3 pages across the table between us. He pressed his fingertip to the first line of figures and began to talk, and I leaned forward over my coffee and listened to the man who had kept my company's financial conscience alive for 8 months tell me in precise and careful detail exactly how much had been taken and exactly where it appeared to have gone. By the time he finished, my coffee was completely cold, and the sugar dispensers were all full, and the morning light through the front window had shifted from pale gray to the clean flat gold of a California November noon. "How bad is it?" I asked. Frank closed the folder and looked at me directly. "The number I can document is north of $500,000 in fraudulent invoicing alone," he said. "That doesn't include whatever has moved through the Delworth Capital transfers, which I can see leaving our accounts, but can't fully trace from my end. For that, you'd need someone with access to the receiving institution's records." He paused. "Richard, whoever set this up, they're not finished. They're still running transactions. Whatever they're building, they haven't completed it yet." I picked up the folder and held it in both hands, feeling the weight of it. 8 months of Frank's meticulous, quiet, dangerous work. 8 months of a good man doing the right thing in the dark, with no guarantee that anyone would ever turn the lights on. "I'm going to need you to keep doing exactly what you've been doing," I said. "Keep your records, keep your distance from Daniel and Victoria. Don't give them any reason to look at you more carefully than they already are." "And you?" Frank asked. "I'm going to make some phone calls," I said. I put the folder in the inside pocket of my jacket and stood up and left 2 $20 bills on the table, enough to cover the coffees, and then some, the way my father had always done, in places that deserved it. I walked to the door and pushed it open and stepped out into the flat, gold November light. Somewhere in the network of transfers and shell companies and falsified invoices, there was a thread. There was always a thread. You just had to find the right place to pull. Frank arrived at my house at 9 that evening with a laptop, 2 external hard drives, and a thermos of coffee strong enough to strip paint. Evelyn was at Maggie's. The house was quiet in the particular way that houses are when someone who belongs in them is missing. I had cleared the dining room table and set up the portable printer I kept in my home office, and by the time Frank spread his materials across the table, the room looked less like a dining room and more like the kind of place where serious people did serious work, which was exactly what it needed to be. "Walk me through the outgoing transfers," I said. "Everything that moves toward Delworth Capital. Every routing number you have." Frank opened his laptop and turned it so we could both see the screen. "The money leaves Hayes Industrial through 3 separate LLC accounts," he said, pulling up a spreadsheet that made my chest tighten just looking at it. "1 registered in Delaware, 1 in Nevada, 1 in Wyoming. Standard shell company geography. Those 3 states have the weakest disclosure requirements in the country, which is why every financial criminal in America uses them. The money passes through all 3 accounts within 48 hours and lands here." He pointed to the final column. "Delworth Capital Management, New York routing number, commercial account at a private bank in Manhattan." I leaned closer to the screen. "Who owns Delworth Capital?" "That's what I couldn't get from my end," Frank said. "The registered agent is a law firm in Wilmington, Delaware, standard nominee service. They front for hundreds of companies. They'll tell you nothing without a subpoena." He looked at me. "I called Roy Hutchins this afternoon, before I came here." Roy Hutchins. I had met Roy twice, once at an industry conference in San Diego 7 years ago, and once when Frank had brought him in to consult on a fraud case involving one of our former vendors. Former FBI, 15 years in the financial crimes division before he went private. The kind of man who could trace a dollar through a labyrinth of shell companies the way a hunting dog traces a scent relentlessly and without error. Frank's phone buzzed on the table between us. He glanced at it and pushed it toward me. "That's him now." I picked up the call and put it on speaker. "Roy." "Richard." His voice was flat and precise, no wasted syllables. "I've been looking at the Delworth Capital registration for the past 3 hours. The registered agent is a dead end like Frank told you. But I ran the physical address on the original incorporation, filing the address they used before they switched to the Wilmington nominee. It's an apartment on West 84th Street in Manhattan." A pause. "The lease on that apartment prior to 2019 was held by a Victoria Marsh." The room went very still, and Frank's jaw tightened until the muscle in his cheek jumped visibly. My right hand pressed flat against the table surface, and I was aware of the pressure of the wood grain against my palm in a way that was almost painful. Victoria Marsh. Before she became Victoria Marsh Hayes. Before she married my son and moved into my world and spent 11 months systematically dismantling everything I had built for my family. "There's more," Roy said. Delworth Capital has been receiving transfers from at least two other construction supply companies in California. Hayes Industrial is not the only target. This is a system, Richard, not a one-time theft. A designed operational system that has been running for at least 2 years. I closed my eyes for exactly 3 seconds. Then I opened them. How much? I asked. From Hayes Industrial alone, based on what Frank has documented, I'm estimating between $1.2 and $1.4 million over the full period. Roy's voice did not change tone or pace. He delivered that number the way a doctor delivers a diagnosis clearly without softening it, because softening it would not change what it was. That includes the Evelyn transfers and the fraudulent invoicing combined. Frank exhaled through his nose a long, controlled breath and reached for the thermos. Roy, I said, I need you on this officially. Full investigation. Whatever your rate is, it's fine. Already started, Roy said. I'll have a preliminary report within 72 hours. Don't move on anything until you hear from me. Another pause. And Richard, get yourself a lawyer, a good one, corporate fraud litigation. You're going to need someone who can move fast when the time comes. He ended the call. Frank and I sat across the table from each other, with the laptop screen casting blue light across the document spread between us and the weight of $1.4 million sitting in the air above the table, like something with physical mass. Nathan Cole, I said finally. Frank knew the name. Everyone in Los Angeles corporate law knew Nathan Cole. I'll call him in the morning. Frank poured coffee into both mugs and pushed one across the table to me. What are you going to tell Daniel and Victoria tomorrow? I wrapped my hands around the mug. Outside, a car moved slowly down the street, its headlights sweeping briefly across the dining room window before disappearing. Nothing, I said. I'm going to tell them absolutely nothing. Nathan Cole's office was on the 28th floor of a glass tower on Avenue of the Stars, which was either the most honest address in Los Angeles or the most ironic one, depending on your mood. I rode the elevator up alone, holding the folder Frank had given me and the notes Roy had sent over at 2 in the morning, printed not saved to any device connected to the company network. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that smelled of leather and cold air conditioning, staffed by a young woman who looked at my jacket and my worn leather shoes, and gave me exactly the same professional smile she gave everyone, which told me Nathan ran a disciplined office. Mr. Hayes, she said, he's expecting you. Nathan Cole was standing at his window when I walked in, looking out at Los Angeles, the way a man looks at something he has studied for so long that he no longer needs to examine it consciously. He was younger than I expected, mid-40s lean, with the kind of stillness about him that belongs to people who have learned to save their energy for moments that actually require it. He turned when I entered and shook my hand with a grip that was firm and brief and entirely businesslike. Sit down, Richard, he said. Not Mr. Hayes, Richard. The directness of it told me Frank had already given him enough background to skip the introductory formalities, which was exactly what I needed. I sat. I opened the folder on his desk, and for the next 40 minutes, I talked. Nathan listened the way very good lawyers listen, without expression, without interruption, without any of the sympathetic noises that lesser people make to demonstrate they are paying attention. He simply absorbed everything I said and let it settle. And when I finished, he was quiet for a moment, his eyes moving across the documents I had spread on his desk. Then he picked up his pen. A wire fraud, he said, writing as he spoke. Every electronic transfer across state lines in furtherance of the scheme, that's 18 United States Code, Section 1343, federal. Each individual transfer is a separate count. You're looking at potentially dozens of counts just from what Frank has documented. He moved the pen down the page. Money laundering, 18 U.S.C. 1956. The transfers through the Delaware and Nevada LLCs constitute laundering because the purpose is to conceal the source and ownership of the funds. Also federal, another line. Structuring, 31 U.S.C. 5324. Deliberately breaking payments into amounts below $10,000 to avoid mandatory bank reporting. That one is often overlooked, but it carries serious weight with federal prosecutors because it demonstrates intent. You don't accidentally structure payments that consistently. He set the pen down and looked at me directly. And then there's the California charge, he said. Elder financial abuse, California Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 15.6, 10.30. Your wife is 67 years old, which makes her an elder under California law. The deliberate misappropriation of funds designated for her care and support, that's not a civil matter, Richard. That's a criminal offense under state law, and California prosecutors take it seriously. He paused. Combined with the federal charges, you are looking at a case that could put both of them away for a very long time. My hands were flat on my knees, pressing down. So, we go to the FBI. Not yet. Nathan's voice was level, and certain the voice of someone who had thought about this before I walked through the door. If we contact federal authorities today, Daniel and Victoria will know within 48 hours. They have a lawyer, they'll have several lawyers by the end of the week, and the first thing those lawyers will do is advise them to move any assets they can reach and destroy any evidence they haven't already hidden. He leaned forward slightly. Right now, they believe they are in control of this situation. That belief is the most valuable thing we have. The moment they know they're being investigated, we lose it permanently. So we let them keep running transactions, I said. We let them keep building their own case against themselves, Nathan said. Every transaction they run from this point forward is additional evidence. Every fraudulent invoice, every wire transfer, every structured payment they're adding counts to their own indictment without knowing it. He picked up his pen again. Roy Hutchins? I know his work. He's the best in the city at this. He builds cases that don't fall apart. Give him 3 weeks. By the time he's done, the evidence package will be so complete and so thoroughly documented that their lawyers will have nothing to work with. I thought about Victoria sitting at my kitchen table with her legal pad and her laptop, working at 8 in the morning, with the focused energy of someone who believed the future was already arranged exactly as she wanted it. 3 weeks, I said, give or take. Nathan sat back. In the meantime, you keep doing what you've been doing, tired, agreeable. A man thinking about retirement. He looked at me steadily. Can you do that? I've been doing it for 6 days already, I said. Something shifted in Nathan's expression, not quite a smile, more like a recalibration, a quiet acknowledgement that the man sitting across from him was not the kind of client who needed to be managed. Then you already know how, he said. He walked me through the rest of it, the timeline, the documentation requirements, the precise moment in which Roy's report would be complete enough to bring to the FBI Los Angeles field office. He explained what would happen when they moved and what would happen after, and he answered every question I asked with the same level unhurried precision. When I stood to leave, he held out his hand. One more thing, he said. Whatever you hear, whatever they do in the next 3 weeks, do not react. Do not confront them. Do not give them any reason to accelerate their timeline or change their behavior. His grip tightened slightly on my hand. Let them believe they've already won. That's the only way we win. I took the elevator back down 28 floors. The lobby was full of people moving in every direction, with the particular urgency of a city that never fully convinced itself it had enough time. I walked through the glass doors and out into the November afternoon, and the sun was lower in the sky than it had been when I went in, and the shadows were longer, and somewhere across the city, my son and his wife were going about their afternoon, believing that everything was going according to plan. And I got in my car. I had 3 weeks. I sent the text at 7:45 in the morning from my personal phone using the number Sophie had sent company-wide last December when she was coordinating the holiday party RSVPs. Sophie, this is Richard Hayes. I need to speak with you privately. Not at the office, not on a work line. Can you meet me today? Her response came back in 4 minutes. Yes. Tell me where. That single word, yes, without hesitation, without questions, without the nervous qualifications that most people attach to messages from their employer's founder, told me something important about Sophie Walsh before I had said a single word to her in person. She had been waiting for someone to ask. I chose a Vietnamese restaurant on Sunset Boulevard in Silver Lake, the kind of place that did a serious lunch business and an even more serious dinner, but was essentially empty at 10 in the morning, except for 2 older men playing cards near the window and a ceiling fan turning slowly overhead. I arrived first and took a booth in the back facing the door. Sophie walked in 12 minutes later. She was younger than I remembered. I had seen her in the office perhaps a dozen times over the years, always moving quickly, always with a folder or a laptop under her arm, always slightly in the background of whatever meeting or event was happening. In person away from the office, she looked like what she actually was, a 29-year-old woman who had not been sleeping well for a considerable period of time. The skin beneath her eyes was dark and tight. Her hands, when she slid into the booth across from me, were pressing against each other on the tabletop with a pressure that suggested she was working hard to keep them still. "Mr. Hayes," she said. Her voice was steady, but her jaw was doing the careful work of someone maintaining steadiness through deliberate effort. "Richard," I said. "Please." She nodded. A waitress appeared, and we both ordered coffee. And when the waitress left, Sophie looked at me with an expression that was equal parts relief and terror, which is a combination I recognized from every whistleblower I had ever spoken to in 35 years of corporate work. "You already know something is wrong," I said. It was not a question. Her chin trembled once, just once, and then her jaw locked tight and her eyes went bright with tears. She was absolutely refusing to let fall. "I've known for months," she said. "I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to tell. Daniel made it very clear in September that employees who raised concerns about internal processes without going through him first, where his word was disloyal. She said the word like it tasted wrong. And Victoria," she stopped, pressed her lips together, started again. "Victoria is the kind of person who makes you feel like she already knows everything you're thinking, like there's nowhere to go that she hasn't already thought of first." "Tell me what you've seen," I said. "From the beginning." The coffee came. Sophie wrapped both hands up around her mug the way people do when they need something to hold on to, and she began. She told me about the documents, procurement authorizations, vendor contracts, payment instructions that Victoria had asked her to print, copyfax, or file over the past 8 months. Most of it had seemed routine at the time, but there were specific documents, maybe 15 or 20 of them, spread across the months where something had snagged in her mind like a thread catching on a nail. Vendor names she had never heard of. Authorization signatures that didn't match the company's standard approval chain. Payment amounts that ended in the same numbers over and over, 9,800, 9,600, 9,400. "I asked Daniel about one of them in September," she said. "Just one. I said I wasn't sure I had the right authorization form for a particular vendor payment, and I wanted to make sure I was filing it correctly." Her hands tightened around the mug until her knuckles went pale. He looked at me for about 5 seconds without saying anything, and then he said, "Sophie, your job is to process what you're given, not to audit it. If you can't do that without asking questions, I'll find someone who can." She exhaled sharply through her nose. I went back to my desk, and I sat there, and my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't type for about 10 minutes. "But you didn't stop paying attention," I said. "No." She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, a plain case screen slightly cracked in one corner, and set it on the table between us. "I started taking photos, not every document I didn't want to be. Obvious I didn't know if there were cameras I wasn't aware of. I was scared. But when I processed something that felt wrong, I would take a photo with my personal phone before I filed the original." She pushed the phone across the table toward me. "There are 43 photos. They all have automatic timestamps from my phone's camera. I haven't edited any of them. I haven't sent them to anyone." I picked up the phone. The photos were clear and well framed. Sophie had the methodical instincts of someone who, when she decided to do something, did it properly. I scrolled through slowly, and with each image the picture Frank and Roy had been assembling became sharper and more precise. Vendor authorization forms with addresses I recognized as mail forwarding services. Payment instructions with the structured amounts below $10,000 that Nathan had identified as structuring under federal law. One document, a wire transfer authorization that bore Victoria's signature, and a receiving account number I recognized from Roy's report on Delworth Capital Management. I set the phone down. "Sophie," I said, "have you told anyone about these photos?" "No one." She pressed her palms flat against the tabletop. "Not my family, not my friends, not anyone at the company. I didn't know if I'd get in trouble for taking them. I didn't know if it counted as, I don't know, stealing company information or—" "It doesn't," I said. "I need you to listen to me carefully. California Labor Code, Section 11, O2.5. The Whistleblower Protection Act protects employees who preserve evidence of illegal activity from exactly the kind of retaliation Daniel threatened you with. You cannot be fired for what you've done. You cannot be sued for it. My attorney has already confirmed this applies directly to your situation." I held her gaze. "You did the right thing, Sophie. Every photo, every timestamp, every document. You did the right thing." The tears she had been holding back since she walked through the door broke free. Then not the dramatic kind, not the kind that demanded attention, but the quiet, unstoppable kind that comes when someone who has been carrying something alone for a very long time is finally told that they were right to carry it. She pressed the back of her wrist against her mouth and looked at the ceiling and breathed carefully until she had it under control. "What happens now?" she said. "Now you go back to work tomorrow, and you act exactly as you have been acting for the past 8 months, I said. You process what you're given. You don't ask questions. You give Daniel and Victoria absolutely no reason to look at you differently than they have been." I slid the phone back across the table to her. "Keep these photos safe. Don't delete anything, don't add anything, don't send them anywhere until I tell you it's time." She picked up the phone and held it in both hands, looking at it for a moment, then looked back at me with an expression that had shed most of its fear and replaced it with something steadier and more durable. "Mr. Hayes," she said. "Richard, can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Are you going to fix this?" I looked at the young woman across the table from me, 29 years old, 8 months of fear behind her eyes, and 43 photographs on her phone, and the particular dignity of someone who had done the right thing entirely alone, with no guarantee that it would matter. "Yes," I said. "I am." Monday morning, I walked into Hayes Industrial Supply for the first time in 11 months, carrying a box of donuts from Primo's on Rossmore Avenue. It was a deliberate choice, the donuts, the specific bakery, the timing. Primo's was where I had bought donuts for the office every Friday morning for the first 15 years of the company's existence, back when we were 30 people in a converted warehouse in East Los Angeles. And Friday donuts were the kind of thing that mattered because there wasn't much else in the budget to offer. I had stopped doing it when the company grew large enough that the gesture got lost in the scale of things. Bringing them back now on a Monday after 11 months away sent a message that required no translation. The old man is back, and he's feeling sentimental, and he's thinking about the old days, and maybe the old days are where he belongs. The reception area smelled the same as it always had, recycled air and printer toner, and the faint chemical sweetness of the cleaning solution the night crew used on the floors. 3 people from the administrative team looked up when I came through the glass doors, and the expressions on their faces told me everything I needed to know about the past 11 months. There was relief in those expressions, genuine and unguarded, the kind of relief that people show when something they were worried about turns out not to have happened yet. "Mr. Hayes." Angela from Accounts Payable was the first one on her feet, and she hugged me with the unself-conscious warmth of a woman who had worked for me for 14 years and had stopped worrying about professional decorum somewhere around year 6. "We missed you. It has been—" She stopped and looked at me with something careful moving behind her eyes. "It has been an interesting few months." "I can imagine," I said. I set the donut box on the front counter and opened it, and 3 more people materialized from the hallway with the speed of individuals who had been waiting for something uncomplicated and good to happen. I smiled and shook hands and accepted the welcomes, and I was warm and slightly overwhelmed and quietly emotional in the way that an old man returning home after a long and difficult journey would naturally be. Every word of it was performance. Every smile was calibrated. And my eyes behind all of it were taking inventory of everything they could reach. Daniel appeared from his office at 9:15, and the timing told me he had known I was there since approximately 9:02, and had spent the intervening 13 minutes deciding how to enter. He came down the hall with his arms open and his face arranged in an expression of uncomplicated joy, and I let him embrace me and clapped him on the back and told him he looked good, which was true, and that he seemed to have things well in hand, which was not. "Dad, it is so good to have you back." He held me at arm's length and looked at me with the particular expression of a man who is seeing something he needs to assess. "You look tired." 11 months, I said, and let my shoulders drop about half an inch and rubbed the back of my neck with one hand. "Your body knows when it's been working too hard. Mine has been telling me for about 3 months now." I glanced around the office with the slightly unfocused gaze of a man who finds the familiar slightly foreign. "A lot of changes in here. Small things," Daniel said quickly. "Efficiency updates. I'll walk you through everything." "Not today," I said. "Today I just want to get my bearings, maybe sit in on a meeting or 2, feel my way back into things slowly." I looked at him with an expression that I had been practicing since the morning after I came home, the expressions of a man who is genuinely considering whether he still belongs here. "I've been thinking, Daniel, a lot out there on the road, about what comes next, about the company and the future, and—" I paused as though the next words were difficult to locate. about whether the time has come to start thinking about transition. The word landed exactly as I intended it to. Daniel's chin came up a fraction of an inch, and his pupils dilated slightly, and a muscle in his throat moved once as he swallowed. He had the discipline to keep his voice level and his expression measured, but bodies are honest in ways that faces are trained not to be, and Daniel's body was doing things that a careful observer could read without any difficulty. "I think that's a really healthy perspective, Dad," he said. "We don't have to rush anything, but it's good that you're open to the conversation." "Good," I said. "We'll talk, just not today. Today I'm just glad to be home." I spent the rest of the morning moving through the office at the pace of a man who was recalibrating after a long absence. I asked questions I already knew the answers to. I looked at things slightly too long before responding to them. I let Daniel explain processes that I had designed myself, and I nodded as though the explanations were helpful and new. Victoria arrived at 10:30. She was dressed in charcoal gray, professional and precise, and she greeted me in the hallway outside the conference room, with both hands clasping mine and an expression of warm, daughterly concern. "Richard, you look exhausted," she said. "Are you sleeping?" "Better than I have in months," I said. "Being home helps." She squeezed my hands and held them a beat longer than necessary, and I watched her eyes make their quick professional assessment of me, checking, recalibrating, deciding what she saw. Whatever conclusion she reached seemed to satisfy her, because the tension in her grip softened and she let my hands go and smiled with her whole face. "We're so glad you're back," she said. "The team has missed you." I smiled and thanked her and walked to the coffee station and poured myself a cup, and over the rim of the mug I watched Victoria cross to Daniel's office and push the door half closed behind her. They were in there for 4 minutes. I did not try to hear what they said. I did not need to. The fact of the 4-minute conversation, the closed door, the timing, all of it was data, and I filed it away alongside everything else I had been collecting since the night I came home. In the afternoon, I called Daniel into my office, the one that still had my name on the door, the one they had not yet reassigned, and I told him I wanted him to take over the authorization signatures on 3 of the smaller vendor contracts we had pending. I explained that I needed to ease back into the workload gradually, that the travel had done something to my hands, a tremor, nothing serious, probably fatigue, and that having him handle the smaller authorizations would help me focus my energy on the larger strategic questions. Daniel agreed with an eagerness he was working hard to modulate into something that looked like dutiful accommodation. By 4 o'clock, Roy Hutchins had sent me a text on my personal phone from a number I had saved under a hardware store name. The message contained 4 numbers and 2 words: 4 new. Accelerating. 4 new transactions. Moving faster now, because Daniel had signing authority on 3 additional contracts, and Victoria believed the old man was genuinely tired and genuinely considering stepping back, and the window they had been waiting for was finally visibly opening. I read the message in the men's room, with the door locked, then deleted it and washed my hands and dried them on a paper towel, and looked at myself in the mirror above the sink for a long moment. I looked exactly like a tired man who was thinking about retirement. I had spent 35 years learning to look like whatever the situation required. Right now, the situation required tired and agreeable and slightly overwhelmed. I was giving them tired and agreeable and slightly overwhelmed with enough conviction that Daniel had already sent 4 new fraudulent transactions through the system before 4 in the afternoon on my first day back. I unlocked the door and walked back to my office and sat down at my desk and looked at the framed photograph on the corner of the desk, the one Daniel had placed there during my absence. It was a family photo from 2 Christmases ago, the 4 of us on the back porch with the mountains in the distance, everyone smiling. Daniel's hand was on my shoulder in the photo. Victoria was standing close to Evelyn, her arm around my wife's waist, and Evelyn's smile in that photograph had the particular quality of someone who had not yet learned to be afraid. I set the photograph face down on the desk. Then I picked up the phone and called Frank. "Day 1, I said when he answered. 4 new transactions?" "I see them," Frank said. His voice was flat with a controlled anger that I recognized because I felt it too, the kind that burns cold and long rather than hot and brief. "Roy's already tracking." "Good," I said. "Let them run." Outside my office window, the afternoon light was failing over the Los Angeles basin, going from gold to orange to the deep amber that comes just before dark. Somewhere in the building, Daniel and Victoria were moving through the end of their workday, believing that everything was going according to plan. I turned off my desk lamp and sat for a moment in the gathering dark, and I thought about Evelyn counting dollar bills at the Ralph's checkout line, and I thought about the 4 new transactions Roy was tracking in real time, and I thought about the 3 weeks Nathan had asked me for, and I let all of it sit in my chest and burn the way it needed to burn. Then I put on my jacket and picked up my briefcase and walked out of my office and said goodnight to the people still at their desks. And I rode the elevator down and drove home, and I was a tired man thinking about retirement the whole way there. Before I tell you what Roy found that morning, the thing that made me realize Daniel and Victoria were not just stealing from my family, but were willing to go much further than I had imagined to make sure I could never prove it. I want to ask you something. If you have been with me this far, you already know that the money was gone, that Evelyn had been counting dollars at the checkout line, and that I had spent 2 weeks quietly building a case that nobody in my house knew existed. But what came next changed everything. Drop a "still here" in the comments right now, so I know you are with me, because what I am about to tell you, I could not have prepared for. And I don't think you will see it coming, either. Roy called at 7 in the morning, which told me before he said a single word that whatever he had found was not the kind of thing that could wait until business hours. I was in the kitchen with my second cup of coffee when the phone vibrated on the counter. I picked it up and stepped out the back door into the cold December air before I answered, pulling the door shut behind me. The yard was gray, and still the rose bushes Evelyn had planted along the fence reduced to bare sticks in the winter light. "Talk to me," I said. "Gerald Moss," Roy said. Age 58, licensed psychiatrist formerly of Houston, Texas. Daniel Hayes retained him 11 days ago through a third-party medical consulting firm. A pause that contained more information than most people put into full sentences. His Texas medical license was revoked in 2019 following an investigation by the Texas Medical Board. The charge was signing psychiatric evaluations for patients he had never examined in person. He collected fees. The patients, or rather the attorneys who hired him, got the paperwork they needed. Another pause. He has been operating in California on what appears to be a lapsed reciprocal license that should have been automatically invalidated when Texas revoked the original. Nobody caught it because nobody checked. I set my coffee mug down on the patio railing. The ceramic made a sharp sound against the iron that seemed very loud in the quiet yard. "What has he produced?" I said. "A preliminary cognitive assessment report. 4 pages, dated 3 days ago." Roy's voice remained completely level, the way a surgeon's hands remain completely level regardless of what they are looking at. "It describes a patient displaying significant markers of early-stage executive cognitive decline, including short-term memory impairment, difficulty tracking multi-step conversations, and recurring episodes of disorientation. It recommends immediate removal from high-stress decision-making environments pending a full neurological workup." He paused. "The patient is identified as Richard Hayes, age 65, referred by family members concerned about observed behavioral changes." The cold air moved across the back of my neck, and I let it. Daniel had watched me ask questions I already knew the answers to. He had watched me rub the back of my neck and let my gaze go slightly unfocused and tell him that my hands weren't quite steady from travel fatigue. He had watched me perform the role of a man whose edges were softening with age, and he had taken every single piece of that performance and handed it to a discredited psychiatrist who had turned it into 4 pages of fraudulent medical documentation. I had built the trap myself without knowing it, and walked into it with my eyes open. "Who is he planning to show it to?" I said. "The board," Roy said. "From what I can piece together, Daniel is planning to present the Moss report to at least 2 board members before the end of the week. The argument will be that your cognitive state makes active executive leadership a liability risk for the company, and that a temporary transfer of decision-making authority to Daniel is both medically indicated and legally prudent." He let that sit for a moment. "It's actually quite clean as a strategy. No court involvement, no public filing, no formal conservatorship. Just a private medical opinion presented to sympathetic board members and a corporate bylaw argument about executive fitness." I picked up my coffee and went back inside. I stood at the kitchen counter and thought for approximately 30 seconds, which was longer than I usually needed and shorter than the situation seemed to warrant. "Call Nathan," I said. "Tell him I need an independent medical examination scheduled today. UCLA Medical Center Neurology or Neuropsychology, whoever Nathan thinks is the most credible examiner in the city. Someone whose name means something. Already have someone in mind, Roy said. Dr. Eleanor Park. She runs the cognitive neuroscience program at UCLA. She has testified as an expert witness in 14 federal cases. If she signs a report saying your mind is functioning normally, that report is bulletproof. A beat. I'll call Nathan now. One more thing, I said. The Moss report, can you document that he produced it without ever examining me in person? He never met you, Roy said. His calendar shows no appointment. His office has no record of a visit. The report was generated entirely from second-hand descriptions provided by Daniel and Victoria. The word entirely landed with a particular weight. Under California Business and Professions Code, Section 2052, practicing medicine fraudulently, which includes generating clinical assessments without conducting an actual examination, is a criminal offense, not a civil matter. Criminal. Add it to the list, I said. I drove to UCLA that afternoon. Dr. Eleanor Park's office was in the Semel Institute, a building that managed to be both clinical and oddly peaceful with long corridors and natural light, and the particular quiet of a place where serious people did serious work without needing to announce it. Dr. Park herself was in her mid-50s with close-cropped silver hair and the unhurried manner of someone who had spent decades listening carefully to things other people found confusing. She did not ask me why I wanted the evaluation. Nathan had explained the situation, and Dr. Park had agreed to conduct a comprehensive neuropsychological assessment with full documentation of methodology and findings, the kind of evaluation that would hold up under any scrutiny, legal or otherwise. The assessment took 2 hours and 40 minutes. It covered processing speed, working memory, executive function, verbal reasoning, and a battery of other measurements that I will not pretend to fully understand. What I understood was the structure of it, the rigor, the documentation, the chain of professional custody that would make every finding traceable and defensible. When it was finished, Dr. Park sat across her desk from me and looked at her notes for a moment. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "your cognitive profile is that of a healthy, high-functioning adult. Your processing speed and executive function scores are in the top 15% for your age cohort. Your working memory is excellent." She looked up. "Whatever concerns prompted this evaluation, they are not supported by any clinical evidence I can find." My chest loosened in a way I had not expected. I had been certain of the result before I walked in, but certainty and confirmation are different things, and the difference between them is where relief lives. "How quickly can you have the written report?" I said. "Tomorrow morning," she said. "And Mr. Hayes, whoever generated the assessment you described to my office would need to have examined you personally to produce a legitimate clinical document. An assessment based solely on third-party behavioral descriptions is not a medical evaluation. It is a written opinion unsupported by clinical methodology." She said it the way she would say anything else, clearly without drama, as a statement of fact rather than an indictment. I would be happy to note that distinction explicitly in my report. "Please do," I said. I walked out of the Semel Institute into the late afternoon. The December sun was low and thin, barely touching the tops of the eucalyptus trees along the edge of the campus. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. A text from Sophie, the number I had her save as a dry cleaning service. "Mr. Hayes, board meeting scheduled, tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Your name is not on the invite." I read it twice. Then I called Nathan. He picked up before the second ring. "I know," he said. "Roy just told me. I'm already pulling the company bylaws." Nathan's office at 8 o'clock at night looked different from Nathan's office at 10 in the morning. The overhead lights were off. 2 desk lamps cast pools of yellow light across the conference table, where Nathan Frank and I sat with the Hayes Industrial corporate bylaws spread between us. The original document printed on heavy paper, bound in navy blue, the kind of binding that signals permanence and seriousness. Nathan had a yellow legal pad covered in handwriting. Frank had his laptop open. I had a cup of coffee that had gone cold 30 minutes ago, and that I kept picking up and setting back down without drinking. "Here," Nathan said. He pressed his finger to a paragraph midway down page 11. "Article 7, Section 3. Any meeting of the Board of Directors at which a vote on executive authority or leadership structure is to be conducted requires written notice delivered to all board members and to the Chief Executive Officer no fewer than 72 hours in advance of the meeting. No exceptions are enumerated." He looked up. "None. The drafting is explicit. Whoever advised Daniel that a medical emergency clause could override this provision was working from a standard California corporate bylaws template, not from the actual Hayes industrial document. Frank leaned forward and read the paragraph himself, his lips pressing together as he reached the end. Daniel's lawyer made a $30 mistake, he said. He used the wrong template. A $30 mistake that is going to cost considerably more than $30 to correct, Nathan said. He was already writing. I'll have the TRO application filed with the Superior Court of California by 6 tomorrow morning. The argument is straightforward. The scheduled meeting violates Article 7, Section 3 of the controlling corporate document, and any resolutions passed at that meeting would be void and unenforceable. We'll ask for an emergency injunction blocking the meeting from proceeding. He looked at me. The judge will grant it. The violation is unambiguous. What about the 2 board members? I said. Nathan set his pen down. That depends on what Daniel offered them. He looked at Frank. Frank's jaw tightened. I've been watching the equity structure for 3 months, he said. There have been 2 amendments to the shareholder registry that went through Daniel's authorization channel without my review. I flagged them in October and was told they were administrative corrections. He pulled up a document on his laptop and turned it to face me. They are not administrative corrections. They are preferential equity grants small enough individually to avoid triggering mandatory disclosure, but structured in a way that would increase in value substantially if Daniel assumed executive control. He sat back. He bought their votes with stock he does not yet own. The words landed in the room and stayed there. Promising board members equity in exchange for votes on executive authority was not a gray area. It was a breach of fiduciary duty, a violation of the legal obligation every board member carries to act in the interest of the company rather than in their personal financial interest. It was also depending on the precise structure of the grants, potentially securities fraud. Add it, I said to Nathan. He was already writing. I drove home at 10:30 and lay in the dark and did not sleep, which had become my normal condition. At 5:45, I got up and made coffee and sat at the kitchen table and waited. Nathan texted at 6:08 filed, judges reviewing. At 6:52, granted TRO in hand. I read that second message 3 times. Then I put the phone face down on the table and finished my coffee. Frank was already in the Hayes industrial lobby when I arrived at 7:40. He was wearing his good suit, the charcoal one he saved for contract signings and board presentations, and he had the expression of a man who had been waiting a long time to walk into a room and say something true. Ready? He said. Been ready, I said. The conference room on the 4th floor was already occupied when we arrived at 5 minutes to 8. 2 board members, Patterson and Grayhill, the ones whose equity grants Frank had flagged, were seated at the far end of the table with their coffee cups and their leather portfolios. Daniel was at the head of the table-tie straight posture arranged to project authority. He looked up when Frank and I walked in, and his expression went through 3 distinct phases in approximately 1 second surprise recalibration and a swift reconstruction of confidence. Dad, he said, I wasn't expecting. Nathan walked in behind us. He was carrying a single manila envelope, and he set it on the table in front of Daniel with the flat, unhurried motion of someone who has done this before and expects it to be the last time they need to do it in this particular room. Temporary restraining order, Nathan said. Issued this morning by the Superior Court of California, Judge Margaret Holloway presiding. It prohibits this meeting from proceeding on the grounds that it was scheduled in violation of Article 7, Section 3 of the Hayes Industrial Corporate Bylaws, which requires 72 hours written notice to all board members and to the Chief Executive Officer for any meeting at which executive authority is to be discussed. He looked at Patterson and Grayhill with the expression of a man delivering information they had the right to have. I'd also recommend that both of you consult independent legal counsel today regarding the equity grant amendments filed in October. Accepting preferential equity in exchange for board votes constitutes a breach of your fiduciary duty to this company. That is a civil matter at minimum, and potentially a criminal one. Patterson's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. Grayhill's leather portfolio closed with a soft sound that was somehow the loudest thing in the room. Daniel's hand was flat on the table, pressing down with a force that turned his knuckles white. His jaw was locked. His eyes moved from Nathan to Frank to me, with the rapid calculating motion of someone trying to find a foothold on ground that has given way beneath them. He found nothing. Victoria stepped into the conference room doorway at that moment and stopped. She was wearing her gray coat, her bag over one arm, composed and purposeful. She took in the scene, Nathan standing, the manila envelope open on the table, Patterson and Grayhill sitting very still. Daniel white-knuckled at the head of the table, and every muscle in her face went rigid simultaneously. For one unguarded second, raw panic moved through her eyes like something alive. Then it was gone, replaced immediately by something careful and calculated. But I had seen it, and I filed it away alongside everything else. Maggie Connors opened the front door before I reached the porch steps. She was a tall woman, broad-shouldered in the way of someone who had spent 31 years managing classrooms full of 8-year-olds and had developed the physical presence to match. Her white hair was cut short and practical, and she was wearing a cardigan, the color of old mustard that had clearly been washed so many times it had achieved a perfect permanent softness. She looked at me with sharp brown eyes that had the particular quality of someone who had been thinking about this conversation for quite some time and had already decided what she was going to say. "Richard Hayes," she said. Not a greeting exactly, more like a confirmation. "Maggie," I said, "come in." She pushed the door wider. "I made coffee. Real coffee, not that pod nonsense. Evelyn told me you were particular about it." The house smelled of coffee and something baking, and the faint sweetness of whatever cleaning product Maggie had been using on her hardwood floors. Evelyn was sitting at the kitchen table, in a blue sweater I hadn't seen before. Maggie's probably slightly too large in the shoulders, and when she saw me, she stood up quickly and crossed the kitchen and pressed her face against my chest, the way she had in the front hall 11 days ago when I first came home. Except this time, her arms went all the way around me and held on with a fierceness that told me she had been carrying something new and heavy since yesterday. "I heard what happened at the office," she said against my collar. "Nathan called. He thought I should know." "It's handled," I said. I held her for a moment, my chin on the top of her head, looking over her at Maggie, who was pouring coffee on the counter with her back diplomatically turned. "It's going to be okay, Evie." Evelyn pulled back and looked at me with eyes that were red at the rims, but dry. She pressed her lips together and nodded once, not the defeated nod I had seen in my living room 2 weeks ago. This one was different. This one had something behind it. We sat down. Maggie set 3 mugs on the table and settled into the chair across from me with the comfortable authority of a woman in her own kitchen. And for a moment, nobody said anything, and it was the kind of not saying anything that has texture and weight rather than emptiness. "She told me," Maggie said, not apologetically, as a statement of fact. "Everything. About the money, about Victoria, about the things Victoria said to her. She told me in September when she was at her lowest." She wrapped her hands around her mug. "I've been waiting for you to come home ever since." "I should have come home sooner," I said. "You didn't know." Maggie said it firmly without sentiment, the way she had probably said hard things to 8-year-olds for 3 decades, clearly, so that they landed properly and didn't need to be said again. "And Evelyn didn't let you know, which is a separate conversation that the 2 of you will have in your own time." She looked at me steadily. "But here is what I need to tell you, and I need to tell you now, because I think it matters." She got up from the table and went to the kitchen drawer beside the refrigerator, the kind of drawer that accumulates the miscellany of a life lived carefully, and came back with her phone and a small spiral notebook, the kind with a red cover that elementary school teachers have been buying in bulk since approximately 1965. She set both on the table between us. "In April," she said, sitting back down, "Victoria came to this house with Evelyn. Just a visit," she said. "Very friendly, very normal. But when they left, I found a bank envelope on the kitchen counter, tucked behind the fruit bowl, like it had slipped there by accident." She opened her phone and turned it to face me. "I photographed it before I called Evelyn about it. I didn't know what it meant, but something about it made me uncomfortable, and I've learned over 67 years to pay attention to things that make me uncomfortable." The photograph was clear and well lit. Maggie had taken it in good natural light from directly above, the way someone would photograph a document they intended to be legible. The envelope bore Richard's name on the front and a bank routing header that I recognized immediately as the account structure Frank had flagged in his documentation. Inside the envelope, visible through the open flap, was the corner of a transaction record. "I also need to show you this," Maggie said, and opened the red notebook to a page about a third of the way through. The handwriting was small and extremely neat. 31 years of writing on whiteboards had given Maggie Connors penmanship that a court reporter would respect. In July, Evelyn called me. She was very distressed. She had written a letter, a personal letter to me, describing everything that had been happening, and she read it to me over the phone because she was afraid to mail it. Maggie's jaw tightened briefly. I wrote down everything she read, word for word. I have the date, the time, and the duration of the call in the margin. I looked at the notebook. The entry filled 4.5 pages. "She wrote a physical letter," I said. "She did. She kept it in her bag." Maggie's brown eyes were very still. 3 days after she read it to me, she went to get it, and it was gone. She thought she had misplaced it. She didn't tell me until last week after she came to stay here. A pause. "I don't think she misplaced it." My phone buzzed on the table. Roy. I picked it up. His message was 3 sentences. Forensic document examiner confirmed. Letter submitted to Daniel's attorney was digitally altered. Multiple sections modified after original composition. Daniel's attorney has withdrawn from the case. I read the message twice. Then I set the phone down and looked at Maggie, who was watching me, with the patient expression of someone who has learned that the most useful thing you can do while someone processes important information is to stay quiet and keep the coffee hot. "She altered the letter," I said. "Not a question." "She took it from Evelyn's bag," Maggie said, "and she changed it, and she used it." Her voice was controlled, but underneath the control was something that had been building since April. Something that a woman who had taught children to be honest for 31 years found particularly difficult to sit with. What kind of person does that to a 67-year-old woman who never did anything to her except try to be welcoming? Evelyn's hand found mine on the table. Her grip was strong and warm and steadier than I expected. "The kind of person who just made a very serious mistake," I said. Roy's follow-up message arrived 30 seconds later. "California Penal Code 141, tampering with evidence, adding to the file." I looked at Evelyn. Her eyes were clear now, all the red gone out of them, replaced by something that had taken 11 months of fear and waiting to arrive at the particular calm of a woman who has finally stopped being alone with the truth. "Is it almost over, Rich?" she said. I held her hand and looked at her and thought about 4.5 pages of careful handwriting in a red spiral notebook, and a bank envelope photographed in good natural light, and a forensic examiner's report that had just ended a lawyer's involvement in this case. "Almost," I said. Roy called at 8:15 the next morning with the particular energy of someone who has stayed up most of the night following a thread and has finally found where it ends. "The pattern I told you about," he said. "The consistent typos in the transaction records. I ran them against every employee who had system access during the flagged period." A pause. "It's Marcus Webb." I already had my jacket on. "Where?" "He's at the office, but Richard don't bring him in there. Not the office, not anywhere near the building." I texted Marcus from my personal phone. 14 words. "Marcus, this is Richard Hayes. I need 5 minutes. Parking structure on Victory in Burbank." His response came back in less than 2 minutes. "What time?" Not a question, not a hesitation. Just those 2 words and the absence of a question mark told me everything about the state of mind of a man who had been waiting 8 months for someone to finally look in the right direction. Now I sent back. The parking structure on Victory Boulevard was the kind of place that exists in every mid-sized California city, 4 levels of concrete fluorescent lights that buzzed at a frequency designed to discourage lingering a pervasive smell of motor oil and exhaust. I pulled into the 2nd level and waited. Marcus Webb arrived 7 minutes later in a gray Honda Civic that had a dent in the rear quarter panel and a parking permit for Hayes Industrial hanging from the mirror. He was 50 years old and looked it in the way that certain men look their age, not diminished by it, just marked by it, the way a workbench gets marked by decades of honest use. He parked 2 spaces away from me and got out slowly, like a man whose joints were telling him something his mind was trying to ignore. He stopped a few feet away and looked at me with the expression of someone who has rehearsed this moment in their head so many times that the reality of it has become slightly unreal. "Mr. Hayes," he said. "Richard," I said. "Walk with me." We moved toward the far end of the level where the light was thinner, and the nearest car was 20 feet away. Marcus walked with his hands in his jacket pockets and his eyes on the middle distance, and I let him have the silence for a moment, because some people need to arrive at a conversation before they can be in it. "The typos," I said finally. His jaw moved. "You found them." "Roy Hutchins found them. He's good at that." Marcus exhaled slowly through his nose. "I didn't know if anyone would. I didn't know if anyone was looking." He stopped walking and turned to face me. His eyes were the eyes of a man who had been carrying something alone for too long. Not broken, not guilty exactly, but deeply and specifically tired. I found the first duplicate serial number in March. 2 invoices from 2 different vendors with the identical number. That doesn't happen, Mr. Hayes. Every invoice in a legitimate system has a unique identifier. Duplicates mean someone generated a false document and didn't bother to create a unique number for it. Or did it so fast, they made an error. His voice had the flat precision of a man reciting something he has gone over in his mind hundreds of times. I ran a full check. There were 23 duplicate serial numbers across 4 vendor accounts over 6 months. Why didn't you come to Frank? I tried. The 2 words landed hard. I went to Frank in September. I asked him about the duplicates carefully because I already suspected that asking the wrong question to the wrong person would end my career. He looked at me steadily. 2 weeks after that conversation, Daniel called me into his office. Just the 2 of us. He told me that he was aware I had been asking questions about vendor documentation and that he wanted to address some concerns he had about my own financial history before the situation became complicated. His throat moved. 5 years ago, I made an error on my tax return, not fraud. A genuine mistake. I miscategorized some freelance income I reported on a 1099. I caught it myself 18 months later and filed an amended return and paid the difference and the penalty. It was resolved. It cost me about $4,000 and a lot of anxiety. He paused. Daniel had somehow obtained a copy of the original filing before the amendment. He told me that if I continued asking questions that made people uncomfortable, he would bring it to the attention of the IRS as evidence of intentional underreporting. The anger that moved through me was cold and specific, the same cold, specific anger I had felt since the night I came home. I kept it where it belonged, internal, contained, useful. He used a resolved tax error to silence you, I said. He used it to make me afraid, Marcus said, which worked. For 8 months it worked. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a key, a small brass key, the kind that opens a personal safe. But I kept printing. I didn't know what else to do. Every transaction that looked wrong, I printed a copy and put it in the safe in my home office. He held the key out to me. 47 documents, every one of them dated, every one of them cross-referenced against the corresponding vendor record in the system. I looked at the key in his palm for a moment. Then I took it. Marcus, I said, Nathan Cole is going to make 2 phone calls this afternoon. The first is to the IRS Taxpayer Advocate Service, which handles exactly the kind of situation. You're describing an amended return that was filed in good faith, already resolved being misrepresented as intentional fraud. That situation will be documented and closed formally and permanently by the end of the week. I held his gaze. The second call is to put your name on the record as a protected witness under California Labor Code Section 1102.5, the same law that protects Sophie Walsh. You cannot be fired, demoted, or legally threatened for the documents you've preserved. Something shifted in Marcus Webb's face, not the dramatic relief of movies, but the quieter and more durable kind that comes when a specific fear you have been living with for a specific amount of time is lifted by a specific and credible solution. His shoulders dropped about half an inch, his jaw unclenched. He looked suddenly precisely his age, which was to say he looked like a man who had worked hard and honestly for a very long time and deserved to stop being afraid. There's something else, he said. On the key ring, small silver key. That opens the second drawer of my filing cabinet at home. Behind the hanging folders in the back, there's a manila envelope. He met my eyes. I put something in there in October that I think you're going to want to see. I don't know exactly what it means, but it has Victoria's name on it and a New York bank routing number I've never seen associated with any Hayes Industrial account. I closed my hand around the key. I'll be at your house at noon, I said. Marcus nodded. He put his hands back in his jacket pockets and walked back to his gray Honda Civic with the dent in the rear quarter panel, and I watched him go, and I thought about 47 documents and a brass key, and a man who had spent 8 months doing the right thing entirely alone in the dark, with no guarantee that it would ever matter. It mattered. My phone buzzed. Roy Victoria just tried to access the Delworth Capital account remotely. System flagged it. She's looking for the money. I read the message once, slid the phone back into my pocket. She was starting to feel the walls. 4 minutes. That was all Roy said when I picked up. Just those 2 words and then a breath that contained everything else. I was in the driveway of Marcus Webb's house in Glendale, sitting in my car with the engine running and the heater on and 47 documents in a manila envelope on the passenger seat beside me. I had been there for 20 minutes, going through the documents one by one, and my hands had been very steady throughout, which was not how my hands felt on the inside. "Talk to me," I said. "Victoria initiated a wire transfer at 11:47 this morning," Roy said. "Delworth Capital Management Account, New York. The transfer amount was $812,000. The destination was a private banking institution in the Cayman Islands." A pause. "FinCEN flagged it in 4 minutes. The account is frozen. The transfer did not complete." I closed my eyes for exactly 2 seconds. Then I opened them and looked at the elm tree in Marcus Webb's front yard, its bare branches making precise patterns against the December sky. "She panicked," I said. "She's been trying to access the Delworth account remotely for 3 days," Roy said. "Each time she hit a restricted module, she pulled back. But this morning, something changed. She went straight for the full balance." His voice was flat and certain. "She knows something is wrong, she doesn't know how wrong." I called Nathan from the car. He picked up before the second ring and said, "I already know. Torres called me 40 seconds ago." Special Agent Diana Torres of the FBI Los Angeles field office had been assigned to the case 11 days earlier, after Nathan submitted the preliminary documentation package. She had been building her own parallel file ever since, quietly, without contact with anyone at Hayes Industrial, in the particular way that federal investigators work when they want the subject to remain unaware until the moment awareness is no longer relevant. Nathan had his laptop open when I arrived at Century City 20 minutes later. Torres was already on the screen, a woman in her mid-40s with short dark hair, and the kind of composed, unhurried authority that belongs to people who have delivered bad news to powerful people enough times that it no longer requires any particular preparation. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "the attempted transfer this morning constitutes a violation of 18 U.S.C. 1956, subsection A, to money laundering through international transfer. That's a federal charge independent of everything else we've been building." She looked at me steadily through the screen. "It also tells us that the subject is aware, at some level, that her position is deteriorating. People move money internationally when they're preparing to run or preparing to hide. Neither of those is a posture that works in her favor." "What happens to the frozen account?" I said. "It stays frozen," Torres said. "We'll move for a formal asset seizure order within 48 hours. The funds are not going anywhere." A beat. "Mr. Hayes, I want to be direct with you. We're ready to move on both subjects whenever you give us the word. We have sufficient evidence for federal charges on multiple counts. If you want us to proceed before your company event on the 18th, say the word, and we'll act tomorrow morning." I thought about the grand ballroom of the Biltmore Hotel booked for the Hayes Industrial Christmas Gala. I thought about 200 employees and 30 years of business partners and the investors who had helped build something I had started in a converted warehouse in East LA with 12 people and a used forklift. I thought about Daniel standing at a podium in front of all of them, announcing the future. 2 more days, I said. Torres held my gaze through the screen for a moment. "Understood," she said. "We'll be at the venue by 6 p.m. on the 18th. Plain clothes. You won't know we're there unless you look for us." She paused. "And Mr. Hayes, look for the woman in the blue blazer near the east entrance. That'll be me." After the call ended, Nathan closed his laptop and looked at me across the desk. 2 more days, he said. Not a question, not a challenge. Just the words laid out flat so we could both look at them. "She built this in my house," I said. "She sat at my kitchen table, and she planned it, and she executed it, and she frightened my wife into silence for 11 months. I picked up my coat from the chair. 2 more days means she walks into that room believing she has already won. I want her to believe that right up until the moment she can't anymore." Nathan looked at me for a moment with the expression he sometimes used when he was deciding whether to say something. Then he decided against it and simply nodded. I drove home in the December dark. The Christmas lights on the houses along my street blinked in slow, lazy pulses, the same lights I had seen the night I pulled into my driveway after 11 months away, when the house had looked warm from the outside and everything inside it had been wrong. In 2 days, it would be over. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the car for a moment, with the engine off, listening to the engine tick as it cooled, and I thought about Evelyn counting dollars at a Ralph's checkout line, and I thought about Maggie's red spiral notebook, and I thought about 47 documents in a manila envelope on my passenger seat, and I let all of it sit in my chest and be exactly what it was. Then I went inside. I drove to the office at 11 p.m., not because there was work to do. The work was done. Roy had submitted the final evidence package to Torres that afternoon. 412 pages, every transaction, documented every shell company, traced every fraudulent invoice cross-referenced against its corresponding fabricated vendor record. Nathan had confirmed that the FBI asset seizure order on the Delworth Capital accounts would be executed by 9 a.m. tomorrow, 2 hours before the gala began. There was nothing left to do. That was precisely why I needed to be there. The building was empty and dark except for the security lighting in the lobby and the single desk lamp I turned on in my office. I sat down in the chair I had sat in for 35 years, the same chair reupholstered twice the armrests worn smooth, in the exact places where my arms had rested 10,000 times, and I looked at what was on my desk. The folder Roy had sent over, Nathan's final memo, the 47 documents Marcus had kept in his safe for 8 months, Sophie's signed statement, Maggie's red spiral notebook, and in the corner of the desk, face down where I had left it 2 weeks ago, the family photograph Daniel had placed there during my absence. I left it face down. Instead, I looked at the framed photograph on the wall, the one I had hung there myself 22 years ago. The week we moved into this building, it was a picture of the original warehouse on Alameda Street in East Los Angeles, where Hayes Industrial had started. 12 employees, 1 loading dock. A used forklift with a cracked steering column that I had repaired myself on a Sunday afternoon, because we couldn't afford to have it done. Evelyn had packed lunches for the crew that first summer, 12 brown paper bags every morning, because the nearest decent food was 4 miles away, and nobody had time to leave. She had done it without being asked, and without making anything of it the way she did most things quietly, because the work needed doing, and she was there to do it. I thought about her at the Ralph's checkout line, counting dollars. My chest tightened in a way that had become familiar over the past 4 weeks. Not grief exactly, not anger exactly, but the compound of both that forms when something you love has been harmed and the harm cannot be undone, only answered. I picked up my phone and called Frank. He answered on the first ring. "I'm still at the office," he said. "4th floor. I've been waiting for you to call." "Lock them out," I said. "Both of them, tonight." A pause of about 3 seconds. Then, "Already running. Give me 4 minutes." I set the phone down and waited. Outside the window, the December dark over Los Angeles was that particular shade that the city gets after midnight. Not true darkness, never true darkness, but a deep amber gray that comes from 10 million lit windows and 10 million lives going on simultaneously in every direction. My phone buzzed. Frank Dunn. Daniel and Victoria lost system access at 11:58 p.m. They won't know until they try to log in tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, they would have larger problems than a locked account. I stood up and took the navy blue suit jacket from the coat hook behind my office door. The jacket from the suit I had bought in 1989 for the signing of Hayes Industrial's first major contract, a supply agreement with a construction firm in Long Beach that had kept us solvent through our 2nd year. The fabric was good wool, and good wool does not age the way other things age. It simply becomes more itself over time. I put it on and stood at the window. The man in the glass looking back at me was 65 years old, with gray hair and deep lines in his face, and 35 years of early mornings, and hard decisions written into the set of his jaw. He was not the man Daniel and Victoria had spent 4 weeks managing, the tired, agreeable, slightly confused man who asked questions he already knew the answers to and rubbed the back of his neck when things got complicated. He was the man who had built the thing they were trying to take. I took the jacket off and folded it carefully over my arm. I turned off the desk lamp. I walked out of my office and down the hall and rode the elevator to the lobby, and I pushed through the glass doors into the cold December night. Tomorrow, I would put the jacket on and not take it off until it was finished. I woke at 5 without an alarm. My body had simply made the decision, and I didn't argue. I made coffee in the dark kitchen and stood at the window watching the December sky shift from black to that deep gray blue that settles over Los Angeles just before sunrise when the city finally quiets down, and the San Gabriel Mountains are barely distinguishable from the darkness behind them. I drank 2 cups and let my mind rest. Sometimes that's the most useful thing you can do before a long day. By 6:15, I was upstairs showering and shaving with deliberate care. I had learned long ago that the small rituals of preparation are never truly small. 35 years back, getting ready in a bathroom above the Alameda Street warehouse before a meeting with a bank officer who held Hayes Industrial's first credit line in his hands, I'd understood it then. You show up as the version of yourself that knows what it's doing because that's the version you need to be. The navy suit was waiting on its hanger. I dressed methodically, trousers first, then the white shirt buttoned slowly from the bottom, up the way my father had taught me, the dark tie half Windsor tight and even, then the jacket. I stood before the mirror, 65 years old, gray hair, deep lines, 35 years of early mornings carved into my jaw. The suit fit with the authority of something that had been through things alongside me, not perfectly, but honestly. Frank called first. The projector was set. Both screens ready, the presentation tested 3 times. Every document loaded clean, every timestamp visible, every page number matched Nathan's evidence package. "Richard, it's going to work," he said. I told him I knew. Nathan called at 8:45. The asset seizure order had been executed at 9:02. Delworth Capital Management's accounts were frozen under federal authority. Daniel and Victoria had both attempted to access the Hayes Industrial financial system that morning and been denied. They knew something was wrong, they just didn't know what yet. They'd find out tonight. Torres and her team were in position, 3 plainclothes agents stationed at the main doors, the east entrance and the service corridor. "Once you walk into that room," Nathan said, "there's no going back." Outside my window, a mockingbird was running through its repertoire in the oak tree at the yard's edge, cycling through songs without hesitation, without apology. "Nathan," I said, "I've been ready for 35 years. I just didn't know for what." I arrived at the Millennium Biltmore on Grand Avenue at 2 o'clock. The ballroom was still being arranged: tablecloths, pine boughs, white roses, 200 chairs, 12 tables, a stage with a clear acrylic podium, and 2 dark screens that would not stay dark for long. Daniel was laughing at the bar. Victoria stood beside him in green, her smile arranged for the room. Neither of them looked my way. I set my navy folder on the table and folded my hands over it, and I waited. The lights in the ballroom dropped at 7:30. Not all the way, just enough to pull the room's attention toward the stage where a single spotlight came up on the clear acrylic podium with the Hayes Industrial logo etched into its base. 200 people set down their glasses and turned in their chairs, with the particular collective movement of an audience that has decided collectively that the evening has officially begun. Daniel walked onto the stage. He was wearing a suit I had not seen before, charcoal well-cut, the kind of suit a man buys when he wants to look like he already owns the room he's walking into. He moved to the podium with an ease that I recognized as rehearsed, the specific ease of someone who has practiced this entrance enough times that it no longer feels like practice. He adjusted the microphone, looked out at the room, and smiled the smile of a man who believes the future is already arranged exactly as he intends it. "Good evening," he said. His voice carried well. He had his mother's voice, clear and warm, the kind that makes a room lean toward it. 35 years ago, a man named Richard Hayes rented a warehouse on Alameda Street in East Los Angeles with 12 employees, 1 loading dock, and a forklift that needed more work than the contracts did. Scattered laughter, genuine warmth. These were people who knew the story, who had been part of the story at various points, who felt the particular affection that accumulates over decades of working alongside someone. I sat at the front table with my hands folded on top of the navy blue folder, and I listened to my son describe my life. He was good at it, I will give him that. He had the structure right, the emotional beats in approximately the correct places, the humor calibrated for the room. He talked about growth and vision and the supply chain rebuild I had completed across 11 states, giving me full credit for the work, which was either genuine or strategic, and I had stopped being able to tell the difference where Daniel was concerned. Frank was sitting 2 chairs to my left. He was looking at the stage with an expression that was entirely neutral and cost him something to maintain. "My father," Daniel said, and his voice shifted into a register that was quieter and more personal, "has given everything to this company, everything. And after 11 months on the road, rebuilding our supply network almost entirely from scratch, I think it's time we acknowledge what that kind of dedication costs a man." He paused. "He's not as young as he used to be. None of us are." A careful, self-deprecating smile. "But some of us feel it more than others. And the greatest thing a leader can do, the thing that separates good leaders from truly great ones, is knowing when to trust the next generation to carry what they built. Victoria was standing near the base of the stage steps, slightly to the left, her hands clasped in front of her. She was nodding slowly, her face arranged in an expression of wifely pride and quiet encouragement. From where I sat, I could see the tension in her shoulders, that the expression was designed to cover the particular tension of someone waiting for a thing they have been planning for a long time to finally arrive. "I'd like to thank my father," Daniel said, "for trusting me with his legacy." The room began to applaud. I unfolded my hands from the top of the folder. I stood up. The applause continued for a moment, and then it began to shift, not stopping, but changing in quality, thinning at the edges, as the people closest to me registered that I was on my feet and moving. Frank put his hand briefly on the table, as I passed a gesture so small that only I would notice it. I noticed it. I walked to the stage steps at the same unhurried pace I had used to walk every job site and every boardroom and every difficult conversation of my professional life. The steps were 4 of them, carpeted in the hotel's deep burgundy. I climbed them the same way. Daniel saw me when I reached the top. His smile did not disappear immediately. It went through stages confusion, first a rapid recalibration, and then the reconstruction of confidence that I had watched him perform on the morning I walked back into the office. But this time, the reconstruction was slower. This time, something in his eyes did not fully cooperate with the effort his face was making. I put my hand on his shoulder. 1 second, firm and brief. The hand of a man who raised another man and remembers doing it. Then I stepped past him to the microphone. The room had gone very quiet. I looked out at 200 faces, employees who had given years of their lives to something I had built. Partners who had trusted us with their supply chains, investors who had believed in a man from East LA with a warehouse and a plan. I looked at all of them, and I thought about Evelyn packing 12 brown paper bags on a summer morning 33 years ago. Then I leaned forward and spoke. "My son just said something true," I said. "A company cannot be handed to someone simply because they share the founder's last name." The smile on Daniel's face stopped working entirely. The room was very still. 200 people, not one of them moving, all of them looking at the stage where a 65-year-old man in a 35-year-old suit had just said something that did not sound like a retirement announcement. I let the stillness sit for a moment. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and took out the small remote Frank had given me that afternoon. I pressed the single button on it. The screens came on. Both of them simultaneously, the 2 large displays flanking the stage and the overflow monitor by the east entrance that Frank had added at my request, so that no one in the room would have an excuse not to see. The image that appeared was not a company logo or a celebratory slideshow. It was a spreadsheet. Clean white with columns of dates and amounts and account numbers that meant nothing to most of the people in the room and everything to 2 of them. 11 months ago, I said I left Los Angeles to rebuild the supply network that keeps this company's alive. While I was gone, my son and his wife were entrusted with the day-to-day operations of Hayes Industrial Supply. I looked out at the room, not at Daniel, not yet. They were also entrusted with something more personal. Every month I transferred $10,000 into a family account designated for my wife's living expenses, so that she would be comfortable and provided for while I was away. I clicked the remote again. The spreadsheet changed. 12 rows highlighted in sequence, 12 months, 12 transfers of exactly $10,000 each one arriving on the 1st of the month, with the precision of a system that had been set up and forgotten because I believed it was working. Every transfer cleared, I said. Every single one. I checked the outgoing confirmations myself every month from whatever city I happened to be in. The money left my account on schedule. It arrived at the family account on schedule. I paused. What happened next is what I want you to see. The screen changed again. 48 hours. That was all it took. 48 hours after each deposit, an automated transfer moved 98% of the funds out of the family account and into a chain of limited liability companies registered in Delaware and Nevada before arriving at an account in New York under the name Delworth Capital Management, an entity whose registered address, when traced by a former FBI financial crimes investigator, turned out to be the Manhattan apartment where Victoria Marsh had lived before she became Victoria Marsh Hayes. I heard someone in the room draw a sharp breath, then another. "My wife's name is Evelyn," I said. "She is 67 years old. She taught 3rd grade for 31 years at Jefferson Elementary School in Los Angeles. While I believed she was living comfortably on the money I sent home, she was using her personal savings to pay our electric bill. When those ran out, she borrowed money from her closest friend 5 times over 11 months to buy groceries and keep the lights on. My voice did not shake. I had made a decision somewhere around 2 in the morning, on a night 3 weeks ago, that my voice was not going to shake when I said this in front of the people who needed to hear it. She did not tell me because she did not want to be my burden, because she thought I was already carrying enough. The screen changed one final time. Roy Hutchins had done meticulous work. The final display showed a network diagram, Delworth Capital, at the center lines, radiating out to the Delaware LLC, the Nevada LLC, the Wyoming Holding Company, and beyond those 2 other California construction supply firms whose accounts had been feeding the same system for the better part of 2 years. The total figure in the bottom right corner of the diagram was not a number I had authorized anyone to spend. Victoria moved first. She came up the stage steps fast, her green dress catching the light, her hand reaching toward the remote in my hand, with the urgent, purposeful motion of someone who believes that if she can stop the information from being seen, she can stop it from being real. Nathan stepped into her path from the right side of the stage. He did not touch her. He simply stood there solid and immovable, and she pulled up short with her chest heaving, and her carefully constructed expression finally completely coming apart at the seams. "This is not," she started. Her voice was high and thin, stripped of its usual precision. "Daniel, this is not what it looks like. There are explanations for every—" "Daniel," I said, just his name. Quietly. He was still standing where I had left him, to my right 3 feet from the podium. His face had gone the color of old concrete. His hands were at his sides, and his fingers were moving slightly the way fingers move when a mind is running through options and finding none of them viable. He looked at me, and I looked at my son, really looked at him the way a father looks at a child. He raised and fed and drove to school and coached in Little League and helped with homework and watched graduate and believed in, completely and without reservation, for 38 years. "I built this," I said quietly enough that only he could hear it, "so you would never have to struggle the way I did. That was my mistake, not the trust. The mistake was thinking that giving you everything meant you understood the value of anything." His jaw moved. Nothing came out. Special Agent Diana Torres appeared at both entrance doors, simultaneously her. In the blue blazer on the east side, her colleague in gray at the main doors. She did not rush. She walked across the room at a pace that communicated complete authority and zero urgency. The pace of someone who knows the situation is already resolved and is simply completing the final administrative steps. She reached the stage and looked at Victoria, then at Daniel. "I'm going to need both of you to come with me," she said. "We can do this quietly, or we can do it here. Your choice." Victoria looked at the room, at 200 faces that had known her for years, that had attended her charity events and accepted her dinner invitations, and believed her carefully maintained performance, and saw in those faces what she had not calculated for. Not anger, not satisfaction. Just the steady accumulated weight of the truth, finally taking up the space it had always deserved. She walked toward the door. Daniel followed. I stood at the podium and watched them go, and I did not feel what I had expected to feel. I had expected relief. What I felt instead was something quieter and more complicated, the specific sorrow of a man who got exactly what he needed and lost something in the getting of it that he cannot name and cannot recover. The east entrance doors closed behind them. I looked down at the front table. The navy blue folder was still there exactly where I had left it. And standing in the doorway at the back of the room, in a blue sweater slightly too large in the shoulders that I recognized as Maggie Connors, was Evelyn. She was looking at me. I stepped down from the stage. She was still in the doorway when I reached her. I did not say anything. She did not say anything. She simply put both arms around me and held on, and I held her back, and we stood like that in the doorway of the Millennium Biltmore Ballroom, while the room behind us slowly came back to life, chairs scraping, voices resuming the particular sound of 200 people deciding collectively how to process what they had just witnessed. Frank appeared at my shoulder after a few minutes. He looked at Evelyn, then at me, and nodded once the nod of a man who has been waiting a very long time for a night to be over. "Go home," he said. "I'll handle the rest." We did. In the weeks that followed, the legal machinery moved with the cold efficiency that federal cases bring, when the evidence is complete and irrefutable. Daniel and Victoria were charged with wire fraud, money laundering, structuring elder financial abuse under California law, tampering with evidence, and following the attempted Cayman Islands transfer, international money laundering. The Delworth Capital accounts were liquidated under federal asset seizure. Every dollar that could be traced was traced, and the portion attributable to Hayes Industrial was returned to the company. The two board members who had accepted Daniel's equity grants resigned. Gerald Moss surrendered what remained of his California operating privileges. The attorney who had unknowingly filed Victoria's altered letter was cleared of wrongdoing after cooperating fully with investigators. Frank Delgado was formally reinstated as chief financial officer. Sophie Walsh was promoted to operations coordinator. Marcus Webb continued as head of accounting, his tax matter quietly resolved, his name added to no list that he did not belong on. I did not sell the company. I did not retire. I went back to work on the 2nd of January, which was a Thursday, and I sat at my desk and looked at the supply network I had spent 11 months building across 31 states. And I thought about what Frank had said to me in a coffee shop in Pasadena in November, that whatever they were building, they hadn't finished it yet. They hadn't finished it, but I had. Evelyn paid Maggie back in full, every dollar in a single transfer on the 23rd of December. Maggie called her afterward and told her it was unnecessary and that she was putting the money into a college fund for her granddaughter. And Evelyn cried, and Maggie told her to stop it, and they made plans to have lunch the following Tuesday, which they did. On Tuesday mornings now, I drive Evelyn to that lunch and drop her off and pick her up 2 hours later. And in between, I get coffee at the place on Lake Avenue in Pasadena, where I first met Frank, and I sit in the back corner booth and I read, and I do not think about anything I cannot control. The most painful thing was never the money. It was not even the betrayal, though. That was its own specific wound that healed the way deep wounds do, slowly, incompletely leaving something permanent behind. The most painful thing was knowing that while I was building something for our future, the woman I love was home counting change, too proud to say she was struggling because she did not want to add to the weight I was already carrying. She was never my burden. She was always the reason. I know that now in a way I did not know it before, and that knowing earned the way. All real knowledge is earned at a cost you would not have chosen is the thing I carry forward. On the evenings when the work is done and the office is empty and the Los Angeles sky is going amber outside the window, I call her. She picks up on the second ring, always the way she always has. And that, in the end, is the whole of it. There is something I have learned that I did not expect to learn at 65 years old, after 35 years of reading contracts and tracking numbers and believing that diligence was the same thing as protection. It is not. You can do everything right, work every day, provide every dollar, build something from nothing with your own 2 hands, and still fail to protect the person who matters most, simply because you assumed that love was enough to keep the people around you honest. It is not. Love is not a safeguard. Love is a gift. And gifts, I have learned, must still be given with open eyes. I believe God puts certain trials in front of us, not to break us, but to show us what we are made of, when everything we trusted turns out to be something else entirely. My advice to you is this: do not do what I did. Do not mistake silence for peace or absence for safety. Check on the people you love, not their bank accounts, not their bills them. Call, show up. Ask the questions that feel unnecessary, because the questions that feel unnecessary are often the ones that matter most. I was a man who spent 35 years finding the truth in other people's numbers and missed the truth happening inside my own home. That is the thing I carry forward. That is the thing I would undo if I could. If this family story has stayed with you, if something in it felt familiar or painful or true, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me what you thought, or share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you believe that the people we love deserve better than our assumptions, subscribe to this channel. There are more family story conversations ahead, and every one of them begins with someone finally deciding to tell the truth. Every story of family betrayal carries a warning. Every warning carries a lesson. And every lesson, if we are willing to receive it, carries the chance to do better for ourselves and for the people waiting at home. This has been a family betrayal that nearly cost everything, but it did not. And that more than anything is what I want you to take with you. Because in the end, what survives is not the company, not the money, not the things we built. What survives is the person who picks up the phone on the second ring, every time. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. It means more than I can say. The story you just heard contains fictional elements crafted for the purpose of meaningful reflection. If this kind of storytelling is not what you are looking for, I respect that completely. There is no shortage of good content out there, and you deserve to spend your time on what speaks to you. But if it is, I will be here.